Hi everyone.
Hi.
There's a blizzard outside and we're making mashed potatoes. Lucky us.
Yes. I'm making, his name is LA452.
Very personal.
Yes, very personal user, and his recipe is called Mr. L's Mashed Potatoes, and he said he's a raw meat and potatoes cook, and this is his specialty.
Excellent. I'm making Sonali's mashed potatoes with goat cheese and caramelized onions, which is pretty divine, two of my favorite things.
And the thing that interested both of us was that both recipes call for russet potatoes, which we thought that was kind of unexpected because people are so into like white potatoes and Yukon Golds and all that, and this is the old-fashioned russet. But turns out it makes a great mashed potato, which we'll explain why.
Yeah.
So we're gonna head over to the stove
Because things are already happening. So we've had some onions already cooking for a while here in a mixture of butter and olive oil with a little pinch of salt and a pinch of sugar, and they're just slowly caramelizing while we...
Merrill, what temperature do you do yours on?
I have it on medium heat, and I think you need to play around with it a little bit in case they start to look a little too brown. You can lower the heat, and you can always add a little water if they look like they're sticking.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
as
interesting.
Sonali points out, actually.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to keep these guys going, and Amanda, what are you going to do?
So I have some generously salted water with some garlic cloves and peppercorns and rosemary boiling. And so LA452, he suggests you take out the rosemary, and I got a few peppercorns in there too, before you add the potatoes. And this is very unconventional. Usually you add any kind of root vegetable, you add it to the water before it begins to boil, when it's cold. But he has you add it to the boiling water, and it works out just fine. So
Yeah, all you naysayers.
Oops, yes,
You're right.
Turn it up to high. So it might cool off and not continue boiling right at first, but it'll come back up to a boil pretty quickly.
And all those great flavors of the peppercorns and rosemary and garlic just infuse.
Yeah.
And actually, for Sonali's recipe, I just have potatoes that started in cold water in a more traditional way, and just put them on the burner to get the water boiling. And the other thing that goes on too for the goat cheese and caramelized onion mashed potatoes is that you put some half and half with a clove of garlic, smashed a little, and a bay leaf, and some more butter. Just gets better and better. And you heat that gently while the potatoes are cooking so that you can mix it up later on without it cooling down the potatoes too much.
There's a lot of weight on the stove.
There is. It's a lot. It's weight on weight.
Yes, it is.
So now really it's a waiting game.
Yep.
We might go gaze at the snow.
It is. Okie dokie. So, Mr. L, his potatoes are done. And so I'm going to take them over here and drain them with the garlic and the peppercorns and everything. So you want to use a fine mesh drainer. And then you add them right back to the pot. And you set them back on the stove and let them steam for a few minutes. Kind of dries them out, makes them mash better, as you'll see.
So Sonali's potatoes are finished cooking. They're nice and tender. I'm going to drain those. I'm going to use the same strainer that Amanda used because it's all potatoes. Oops. And then put them back in the pot. And this is a little bit different to Mr. L's potatoes. I'm going to actually put the heat back on for a little bit, just sort of medium low. And you want to dry out the potatoes for a couple minutes. This just really helps to get out any extra water so that they get nice and creamy when you add the half and half and butter and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you don't want soggy taters.
No, you don't. Nothing worse than soggy taters. And you want to keep moving it around a little bit just so that, nothing singes. So for Sonali's potatoes, you put them through what's called a potato ricer. If you haven't seen one before, it's kind of like a big garlic press, as someone pointed out, but for potatoes. And basically it just purees them really finely. It's an extra step to get really smooth potatoes. You just spoon in a bunch. You don't want to fill it completely because then you get them squidging out over the sides.
Squidging?
Squidging. That's very Nigella Lawson.
Yes, I know.
And then you just push down, kind of gently. It makes a nice sound effect.
I like that.
And you essentially get these potato noodles in the bottom of your bowl. So I'm just going to keep ricing.
And I am going to use the traditional potato masher, which handheld. And the thing with Mr. L's potatoes is you mash the whole peppercorns and the garlic cloves and the potatoes all together. And if you don't want to get a big chunk of that was a big chunk of butter, but if you don't want to get a big chunk of peppercorn, you want to make sure that you mash them up. They're soft, so you can kind of crush them. And
distribute the heat a little.
yeah, but you can also leave them whole because it's kind of nice to get this like kapow of pepper as you're eating. And here goes the sour cream. And I'm going to have to use my fingers because I didn't prepare ahead and have a spoon here. In goes the buttermilk.
Which I've never
So
put in mashed
nice.
potatoes before. I think it's such a great idea.
Great, great. Yeah, because you get a nice amount of liquid plus the tang. So mashy.
So are you all mashed up there?
I'm all mashed up.
So I'm going to start adding stuff to mine. We've got the infused.
Do you want me to pour or stir or?
That would be fantastic. Do you mind
Okay,
pouring?
happy to.
Thank you. So this is the half and half with butter and garlic and bay leaf, which we're going to try not to pour in there, but we can always pick it out. Thank you very much.
Ooh.
So you can let it
There
flop
it
in
goes.
there. We can
Got
always
it.
take it out. And Sonali says you may not need to use all the liquid, but we used it all yesterday and we're quite pleased.
Yes, we were.
Really depends on how loose you like your potatoes. Yeah, if you put it all in at once, as we discovered sort of yesterday, it can be very hard to actually mix it in. It's sort of, the liquid all runs around the bowl.
Yeah.
Do you mind putting some salt in
I
here?
don't mind at all. Oh, pretty.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I'm going to take these caramelized onions that are gorgeously brown and mix about half of them, just going to estimate, into the potatoes. And you save the other half for garnish. And would you mind?
They look like candy.
They do look like candy. They actually look
Yes.
a little like amber. We were saying this yesterday.
Yeah,
Would you mind spooning that in?
I'm happy to. This is some goat cheese.
The final touch. You know, because it's not already decadent enough. So you just don't want to have any big chunks, but it's okay to have some streaky pieces. And then, since we're just going to try right out of these bowls, I'm going to put the rest of the onions right on top.
I think that sounds great.
These look really beautiful when you have a pretty bowl. Oh, and I just did a terrible job of spreading them out.
It's kind of funny that you can start with something that looks like this.
And then with
Something that
those,
looks like
I know. All right, go ahead and dig in. I'm just garnishing.
Okay, I'm gonna have a little Mr. L. I love these because they're like mashed potatoes that aren't trying too hard. You know,
It's true.
they have like a lot of personality. They're great. They're, you know.
And they'd be great with a
Delicious.
steak and a glass of red wine, which is
Yeah.
exactly what you said,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah.
And these are a little more gussied up, but not any more difficult to make.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what kind of style you like. They both have a nice tang, but it's totally different.
Yeah.
So now it's up to you.
Yeah.